We recently made a video about 10 things we were surprised by on our first trip to the UK. From being blown away by all of the incredible footpaths there are, to being shocked by how much privacy public toilets have compared to the US. We've experienced so many more surprises, and today we're going to be discussing 10 more. These are loosely in order from least to most surprising, and you might be surprised at what we chose as the top 3.
Number 10 on the list is Sunday shopping hours, which I feel like just might be nicer overall.
It was surprising on our first trip, and being in a store, being in a larger Tesco, because it only applies to larger stores.
Yeah.
But we were in a larger Tesco, and there was an announcement that the shop was getting ready to close, and I think it was only about 4 p.m. and we were surprised by that. And it turns out that there are rules for England that you can only be open for 6 hours on Sunday, and I think there's limited hours on Christmas and Easter maybe too. Now, we've since learned that that doesn't apply to Scotland, and that Northern Ireland is actually a little bit more strict than that. But I will also say in my defense that even when we were in Scotland, there were places that we went that closed earlier than we expected in more remote parts of Scotland. And I think as Americans, we're just used to
things being open normal hours, like every day, basically.
Yeah. And a lot of times places being open 24 hours.
We have now since been in a smaller town area for the last few months, and it is a little more common in some place like where we are now.
Yeah.
But a larger city, like everything's open pretty much every day, normal hours. Thank you to AG1 for sponsoring today's video.
This year, we've made it a goal to focus more on our health. And one of the ways we've been doing that is with AG1.
AG1 is a comprehensive and convenient blend of over 70 high-quality ingredients, including vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. It's become an essential part of our morning routine.
What I love about AG1 is that it supports my overall well-being. It has minerals like copper, chromium, and phosphorus that help to unlock the energy from your food. It's really helpful when we're out traveling and filming our adventures.
Plus, AG1 includes pantothenic acid that supports your mental performance, and folate and niacin, which helps reduce tiredness and fatigue. Perfect for those long editing days.
Do you find yourself reaching for caffeine or sugar for a quick pick-me-up? Since I started drinking AG1, I don't need to anymore because I don't crash like I used to.
And it tastes great. I actually look forward to it every morning.
AG1 takes away all that worry about nutrition. Over 70 carefully selected ingredients in one scoop once a day. Simple. Pineapple.
We just got back from a trip, and even while traveling, it was so easy to keep up our morning routine.
AG1 is also backed by science. Unlike other supplements, AG1's team works with third-party experts to conduct scientific experiments to validate the benefits.
They even offer a money-back guarantee.
Try AG1 for yourself at drinkag1.com/themagicgeekdom or scan the QR code to save 20% when you subscribe. You'll also receive a free 1-year supply of AG vitamin D3 and K2 plus 5 AG1 travel packs with your first purchase.
If you only do one thing for your body every day, make it AG1.
Number 9 is one that I think we noticed from the first Airbnb we stayed at in London at the beginning of our trip, and that is laundry and the differences in our laundry situation.
Which I feel like the major thing is most places that you go do not have a standalone dryer.
Yeah, I think there were very few places we've come across in all of our travels throughout the UK that had an actual, I don't know that we ever had one that had an actual dryer. But even in, and this is just speaking to like Airbnbs and things, but most of the time it would just be a washer and not even sometimes a washer-dryer combo. But that was very surprising. I mean, also that it's in the kitchen because there's not really a laundry room like we would have here.
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to being in smaller places a lot of the time too, that were just kind of apartments.
Yeah.
Though we did have a couple of bigger places, and the laundry was still in the kitchen.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when I was younger, growing up in like the 80s and 90s, my grandma would hang laundry out to dry outside. But I feel like as time has gone on, that culture has kind of gone away here in the US. And we pretty much use dryers all the time now. And I mean, you and I don't necessarily, but we happen to live in a place that has racks to hang your clothes outside, which is very rare in the US. But it's so much more common in the UK and other places in Europe to not use a dryer at all. And that was very surprising on our first trip.
Yeah, I would say so.
Not bad.
No, it's better environmentally, honestly. And probably for your power bill, too.
Potentially. There is one thing I will say though, and that is we went to Dover with our friends Jason and Josh and washed our clothes, and it was just like a wet, dreary few days that we were there.
Yeah.
And in the Airbnb that we were in, it was like 2 days later, our clothes were still not dry because of just how like damp it was outside. And so that was kind of the downside. We ended up going to Paris with some damp clothes.
Yeah,
but
we did.
It's funny that I was just mentioning Dover because number 8 also reminds me of Dover, and that is Guy Fawkes Night. I've seen the movie V for Vendetta, and honestly, before we ever went to the UK, that's about the extent I ever knew.
Your Guy Fawkes knowledge.
Yeah, of Guy Fawkes, is from that movie. And so when we happened to be in Dover with our friends Jason and Josh in November in England, we learned that there's a big celebration called Bonfire Night. If you're an American watching or outside of the UK, Guy Fawkes Night basically commemorates the gunpowder plot of 1605 when Guy Fawkes and other conspirators attempted to blow up the House of Lords and assassinate King James I. It was not successful, and I think part of why it was kind of a surprise is that it felt very similar to our 4th of July, our Independence Day.
Kind of, yeah.
Because we saw big bonfires, there were fireworks. People were telling us that it's a really big deal in this town called Lewis, I think it's pronounced, and that's kind of where to go, which I think it would be really fun to go there.
Yeah.
But it is just kind of feels a little bit of an unusual concept because for us, our big fireworks blowout day feels very patriotic. It's like, yeah, America. And
a lot of things are, America.
And I think to have kind of a similar, like, yeah, let's have fun and have fireworks and have a big fire, but it's commemorating someone trying to blow up Parliament. Like, that's just kind of a strange concept, but I can get behind it. And I want to know if you know of a good place to go. And maybe not just Lewis is the place to be, but I would love to experience a proper Bonfire Night. Bonfire Night. I want to know about it. I want to know where to go, what to do. We were there for one, but we didn't actually celebrate it. We just watched bonfires on the hill from afar, from our little flat.
Thing.
I looked into going to Lewis, and it seemed a little bit overwhelming because there was like all these different societies that had different bonfires, and I was like, I don't know which one we should go to. So I don't know, what should we do? Should we celebrate Bonfire Night, or is it not as big of a deal as we're trying to make it out to be?
I'm also curious if York does anything, because wasn't he born in York?
There's that hotel or something that has a blue sign on the window or outside of it saying,
that Guy Fawkes was born in that building.
I forgot about that.
I don't know.
Number 7, I think applies a little bit more to me because I was the one driving. We've talked about some of the surprises of driving in the UK, but one thing that I knew about going into it but was still surprised is the sheer number of roundabouts in the UK. And I actually looked up the statistic, and it kind of varies depending on what article I could find, but one that I found said that the US has 9,000 roundabouts and the UK has over 25,000, but also is 40 times smaller. So that just kind of gives you the comparison of, you know, we do have roundabouts, but just not that many. What was a little bit surprising to me is that they are much more intimidating in the UK because there can be so many lanes in them.
Yeah.
Where I feel like it's much more typical where if we have a roundabout here in the US, it's in a more rural area and would just be like a 1-lane entry point and not have like multiple things. Like there's even lights at roundabouts sometimes. I feel like the entire situation is very surprising as an American. Number 6 is a pretty surprising one, and that is lack of screens on windows. I know that there are not as many mosquitoes and as many nasty bugs in the UK as there are here in the US, especially here in Arizona where we are, where it's pretty buggy. I was pretty surprised to learn throughout our travels that screens are almost, I mean, I don't know that we ever came across any. It's like a safety barrier against bugs for me, and not having that mental thought of like, that's keeping bugs out. Oh, ignore the cobwebs. See, those are all the spiders coming inside. I was pretty surprised to learn about that difference, and I think if we were ever to move to the UK, I would be, I guess, ordering some custom screens or something, because that is one thing that I would like to take with me.
Especially if you're not having an aircon.
Yeah, and I, you know, we've talked about the lack of aircon before, and I'm fine with that.
For the most part, yeah.
I think the aircon thing isn't a big deal because you really don't need it most of the year with the climate there. And the couple of weeks that you have a heat wave, you really wish you had it, but it's fine for the most part. I would like to have a screen if we're having the window open a lot.
Fair.
It's just what I'm used to. It's like
keep those bugs out even if there's not a lot of them.
Little taste of home.
Taste the screen.
Number 5, I'm also going to talk about because it's my favorite surprise, and that is the abundance of sheep. Unless you've been to both the US and the UK to see the stark difference that we just don't have sheep in the quantities that you do.
No.
I think it seems kind of trivial as an American to be like, I love all of the sheep, but I do. It's just comforting, and it's like how I know I'm in England or the UK in general, you know, like, oh, there's so many sheep in the countryside. I just loved it so much. I love sheep so much. I didn't even know I could love sheep so much. But I think that that's kind of what it represents. As two people who love the UK and have had wonderful experiences there and can't wait to go back, I think that that's one of the things that represents just like the wonderful English countryside.
Do we need to get a cabin or a cottage?
Maybe.
So you could herd sheep?
I would love that. I would love that. I would love to spend a day learning how to be a sheep farmer. That'd be fun.
A shepherd?
Yep, that's a name for it. I call him a sheep farmer. Real quick, if you have made it this far and you are not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. It really does help us out.
Number 4 would be the popularity of the electric kettle, which I was a fan of before we went to the UK.
You were. In Jeremy's defense, he was a fan of a kettle before we went to the UK. But I think the thing that was surprising is the abundance of them, kind of similar to sheep. Because in the US, when you go stay at a hotel, they don't have a kettle. Like,
yeah, very rarely.
Very, very rarely. However, that's the standard in the UK. Like, anytime you stay at a hotel, there's a kettle.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I'm sure part of it has to do with the tea culture.
Yeah.
But what we've learned is that it's, and I often refer to them as a tea kettle because that's what I use it for. I boil water for coffee and tea.
Yeah.
But what we've learned is that you use it for so many more things than we do in the US. They're not very common in the US. And when we have them, we don't use them for that many things. For example, on Bisto gravy, the instructions are about boiling water and then you mix it in to make the gravy. Whereas like our gravy in the US, you cook it on the stove,
yeah,
and you bring it to a boil with it in there.
Usually, yeah.
It's just different. I feel like recipes and things incorporate the kettle so much more than they do here in the US.
Because it's common.
Yeah, because it's common,
yeah.
And I was surprised by that, and it's just not part of our culture here in the same way. Except it's part of Jeremy's culture. He's been a kettle fan since 2000 whatever.
14, I guess.
One of the things that makes it different here, and like I think why it won't ever catch on here, is because our electricity is not at the same capacity. And so I don't think tea culture or kettle culture can be a thing here because our kettles still take longer to boil water anyway. And that brings us to number 3, and that is electrical outlets. Now, I knew before we went to the UK, we had to get special adapters. We knew that the plugs were different.
Yeah.
The electricity was different, but I had no idea that it was different in the way that it's way better in the UK. The UK uses 230 volt, 50 hertz system, and it says in practice, it's around 240 volts, whereas ours is 120. It's pretty wild that the voltage is twice as much.
Yeah, it's going to make certain things run in a faster way, like boiling water in an electric kettle is going to be faster because it's getting more power.
One of the other pieces of that I thought was fascinating that I had no idea about is that there's also switches.
Yeah.
We don't have those.
No, where you can turn off each plug individually, so you can leave things plugged in and just turn off the switch. Because I know that's a thing here, is that a lot of things kind of slowly drain power even if they're turned off. Just
another check mark or point, I guess, in the column of efficiency in the UK versus the US. But yeah, it's true. And I think, you know, even the like 3-prong system, and maybe this is just more of like my own experience, but I think things more and more often now are becoming our 3-prong system, but there's so many things that still use the 2 prongs.
Yeah.
And like, if you're American, if you ever lived long term in the US, I think we all have had that experience of like a really old lamp with like the bad 2-prong thing that like falls out of the socket, and I just feel like that grounding, that like connection, it's just stronger, like it fits better in the UK.
Makes it sit in there better.
I was also surprised because we spent, you know, 6 months in the UK last year and then spent a couple months in Europe after that, and in other parts of Europe where they have the other 2-prong system, I didn't like it as well.
No.
I mean, I'm used to our system, but I feel like comparing the UK system to the other European system,
it seems even less sturdy.
Yeah, I felt like my adapter would fall out of the prong thing even more frequently, and it, I think, made me realize how much I really appreciate the outlets in the UK.
Yeah. Number 2 would be really just the diversity of the different kinds of food you can find in the UK. I mean, we were kind of prepared for bangers and mash and pies and things like that when we went, but we didn't realize, and it's kind of silly because the UK is so near so much more things, many different countries and stuff, that like the national dish is chicken tikka masala, and just the abundance of Asian and curries and Indian food.
As soon as you said Asian food, it reminded me of those hand-pulled noodles that we had in Coventry.
Oh man, those
oh my
were
gosh,
amazing.
Those were the best. I feel like we bring this up every couple of months. We're like, dang, those were some good noodles.
Yeah.
But that's true. We've had so much good food. It's so much more culturally diverse than I think either of us expected.
Yeah.
Even from the first time we got into London and we went to Borough Market, and just everything we had there was amazing.
Some of it was English and some of it was from other places, and it was just all really good. And it's funny that I've talked to like family members and a few other people that have been to the UK, and like my aunt was like, I liked it, but I didn't like the food. And I'm just like, whoever took you to get food took you to the wrong places.
Yeah, we've tried a lot of British food over the course of our channel, and I think there's been very few things that I wouldn't necessarily have again. I mean, that's not even true, because I ate black pudding again for our last video when I thought I wasn't. Oh, it's pork crackling or scratchings.
Scratchings, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Jeremy always has to remind me I didn't care for those. But no, I think the thing that's amazing is that we went to that market in Coventry and it just had such a diverse array of food
and drink. Yeah,
I think about one of the things that I've missed the most since we've been back in the US is doner kebab, or doner kebab, as you like to say it. There are very few places you can find that in the US.
Yeah.
When we were up in Canada earlier this year, we tried it at a place and it was so underwhelming, so sadly underwhelming. It did not do the trick. But anyway, I just think that's one of the things that now that we've been you know, back in the US for a while, there are a lot of dishes that I miss, a lot of really good Indian food that we haven't had, and we really need to make a proper video about some Chinese takeaway. So if you have any suggestions for that, let us know, because maybe next time we're there, we'll give Chinese takeaway a whirl. Number 1, I don't know why it's such a surprise, because I grew up liking things like Mr. Bean and things like that, but I was so surprised by how much I felt a connection to and just felt relatable with British humor. I feel like the British humor of the kind of like sarcasm and dryness. It just feels so relatable, and it makes me feel like that's one of the things that I have a real connection to the UK about, is like we can all laugh together about some of the same things. And now a lot of those things I get the jokes that maybe I wouldn't have a few years ago. One of the things that I think I've noticed over the time that we spent in the UK, because it's sometimes I try to pinpoint like exactly what it is about British humor that I love so much and I find so endearing and feels so welcoming to me. And I think part of that is that it's smarter. It's like a little more witty.
Yeah.
And I feel like in America we have the tendency to be like, here's the joke, you guys.
I don't know, I feel like as time has gone on, we've gotten better at that in America, but I also feel like it's more niche kind of things that aren't quite as broad. And
that's true. That's a good point. Because it's not to say I don't like American humor,
No.
but I think there's a lot of standard American humor that the two of us don't really relate to or not as into. And I think probably a good show to kind of exemplify that would be like The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, not from either one of us.
Which I think for a lot of our UK audience, you have pointed out how weird American TV can be because of the laugh track and the laughter that we add. And I feel like as time goes on, it gets weirder and weirder. And I think that's part of why Big Bang Theory is like hard to resonate with, is like, I don't like the laugh track.
And it's funny to me where I can watch something old that has a laugh track and it doesn't bother me, but I can't watch new things.
That's fair.
I just can't really.
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot over the course of our channel about all the different game shows and panel shows and things that we like. And I truly love the sense of humor and the kind of comedy that comes out of the UK, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of it, but it's one of the things that's been the most pleasantly surprising to learn as we've traveled around the UK.
Yeah, and I would say it's a little less shocking to me, just because I feel like it sounds like I grew up on more of it than you did.
You did. I feel like I liked Mr. Bean, I liked like Monty Python, but I think you definitely had more influence of it when you were
definitely
younger.
Liked those two, but also grew up with Blackadder and Red Dwarf and Are You Being Served? And as I got older and was looking into things more myself, like The Mighty Boosh and Spaced and...
Oh yeah, I liked Spaced. I did watch that.
I was thinking of, but it's left me now. Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. I haven't made you watch that either.
No. I mean, I think that that's one thing that has really bonded us with our love of the UK is like the comedy, you know? It's like this communal feeling of like we're all in this together and we can all laugh at the same things, and I like that.
Agreed.
I'm curious what you think about the difference between American and British humor, because that's something we haven't really asked you about before. You've given us so many recommendations of different comedies and shows to watch, and we love the recommendations. We try to watch as many as we can, although we've got a pretty big list going so far.
A lot.
But I would love to know what your thoughts are between, our different humor and comedy between the two countries. Thank you for watching. Thank you to our patrons for supporting our channel. If you're interested in joining us over on Patreon, you can get extra perks and bonuses. There is a free tier as well, so make sure you go check that out. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. We really would appreciate it. If you haven't seen the video where we discuss the first 10 surprises from our first time in the UK, make sure you go check it out. I'll be right here. We'll see you over there.